They dumped me in a rusted trailer in the Arizona desert. No phone. No neighbors. No way out. My son thought he was leaving me to fade away quietly, like sand swallowed by the wind. But what he didn't know was that the desert had been keeping a secret just for me. If you're watching this, let me know where you're watching from. And buckle up, because you're about to hear how a 71-year-old grandmother went from being abandoned in the dust to owning the kind of fortune people spend lifetimes chasing. My name is Evelyn Carter. People call me Evie. And the day my son locked the trailer door behind me was the day my old life ended. It happened in June, the kind of Arizona heat that makes your skin burn even in the shade. Todd, my only child, the boy I raised alone after his father walked out, drove me 3 hours from Phoenix. He said it was temporary housing. Said the city was too stressful for me. Said this little place out in the desert would be peaceful. Peaceful. That was the word he used while I watched him unload my 2 suitcases like they were trash bags. "Mom, this will be good for you," he said, not looking me in the eye. "The heat is dry. Good for your joints. And the rent here is, well, don't worry. I've already handled it." I knew something was wrong the moment I tried my debit card later that night. Declined. Again. And again. Todd hadn't just handled my rent. He'd handled my entire pension. Wiped the account clean. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. "It's better this way," he said flatly, like a banker closing an account. "I'll take care of everything. You just relax here." Then he drove away, dust swirling behind his car until it disappeared into the horizon. I stood in the doorway of that trailer, sweat running down my back, staring at the endless stretch of sand and cactus. It wasn't peaceful. It was exile. The trailer itself looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1970s. Rust around the windows, a roof patched with duct tape, a fan that coughed more than it blew. The mattress sagged like a hammock, and the water from the tap came out brown before it ran clear. At night, the desert came alive. Howls of coyotes, rattles in the brush, the eerie silence between gusts of wind. I lay awake listening, every creak of the thin aluminum walls reminding me how fragile my situation was. But the hardest part wasn't the heat or the hunger. It was the silence. No phone calls. No visits. No "how are you, Mom?" Todd had erased me as neatly as he erased my bank account. I wrote in my notebook by candlelight, the one possession I'd smuggled out of my old life. On the first page I wrote, "Day 1. My son left me here. I wasn't going to give up out here, I'll rise from it." I thought of all the sacrifices I'd made for him. How I'd worked double shifts at the diner so he could play football. How I'd skipped meals to afford his textbooks. How I signed over the last of my husband's insurance so he could buy his first house. And now? My reward was a trailer on the edge of nowhere. But here's the thing about women like me. We've been underestimated our whole lives. You can throw us into the dirt, but you forget. Dirt is where roots grow. And in that desert, under that cracked earth, something was waiting. That night, as I sat on the crooked porch steps, watching the sun bleed red across the sky, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to give up out here. Not in this trailer. Not in this desert. And definitely not as some forgotten footnote in Todd's perfect little suburban life. No, this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The desert does not forgive and it does not explain. By noon, the heat presses down so heavy it feels like a punishment. The tin roof of the trailer groans, expanding and shrinking like a rusted lung. The fan rattles, coughs, then dies, leaving me in the stillness that feels louder than any storm. I sit at the table with my notebook open and write the same sentence I force myself to believe. Every day is a gift, even if it's dust and dry bread. I write it in block letters, underline it twice. The words are cheap armor, but they keep me upright. Without them, the hours would blend into one long hallucination of heat and silence. The trailer is my cage and my classroom. Nights belong to the roaches, big as bullets, parading along the walls like they own the place. I've learned their schedule. Around 10 they begin, first at the sink, then near the counter. I sit on the bed with a broom ready like a soldier waiting for the enemy. I call the biggest one General. He always sends the small ones first. Food is survival math. 2 cans of beans, 4 slices of bread, half an apple. I break the bread in half and tell myself it's 2 meals. Water I pour into a chipped mug, sip by sip, counting each swallow. Hunger teaches you patience. Thirst teaches you prayer. I set rules for myself. Don't lie down before the sun sets. Don't cry unless there's water nearby to replace the loss. Don't replay Todd's last words more than once an hour. He called me set in my ways. Maybe he thought it was an insult. Out here it's the only thing keeping me alive. But memory doesn't respect rules. It sneaks in with the slam of a cupboard door, the squeak of a front step. Suddenly I am back in the old kitchen, 28 years old, broke but stubborn, cutting his sandwiches into triangles because the teacher said circles made him laugh too hard at lunch. I can still see his sticky hands tugging my sleeve, hear his small voice asking if we could afford cleats, braces, a class trip one day. One day cost me decades. I worked dawn to midnight, diners, offices, ironing shirts. I sold my wedding set for his textbooks and told him it was a reorganization of finances. Sons deserve weightless dreams. Mothers absorb gravity. Now he has cut me loose like dead weight. He thought I was ballast. He forgot ballast keeps the ship steady. I study the desert the way I once studied coupons and paychecks. At 3 in the afternoon, the shadow from the mesquite tree stretches just far enough to cover the porch. At 6:20, a breeze slides through the door if I wedge it at the right angle. By watching the desert, I learn how to survive it. Even the lizard under my step teaches me something. Atlas, I call him. He keeps life simple. Sun, shade, bugs, stillness. He blinks at me like we share a pact. You don't need an audience to survive. Just one witness who knows you're still here. I take the bus into town once a week. Hank, the driver, wears a straw hat and calls everyone ma'am. He doesn't ask questions. He just says, keep your water in the shade. Advice like that is a form of kindness. At the library, I sit in the cool air and print out county parcel maps. Something about the fence line around this lot doesn't match the drawing. A gap aslant. I fold the map into my notebook, next to an old photo of my great-grandfather Carter with a shovel in hand and the same stubborn jaw Todd inherited. Nights test me most. Sweat sticks to my skin, the mattress sags, and the metal walls tick as they cool. I whisper to myself just to prove I still have a voice. Not why me? That question is useless, but not done yet. Day 7, I take inventory. 2 cans beans. 4 slices bread. 1 apple. $3 in coins. 1 stubborn heart. It looks pathetic on paper, yet it makes me laugh. Bitter but proud. Because stubborn hearts don't break. They just keep beating out of spite. Sometimes I stand at the door and watch the horizon blur. Coyotes howl like they're mocking me. The desert is empty, but it is not silent. It has a rhythm. The whine of insects, the crack of cooling rocks, the rattle of loose aluminum in the wind. Out here you learn the difference between lonely and alive. And here's the truth my son doesn't know. I was not thrown away. I was planted. The desert strips you bare. But it also reveals what was always under the skin. I keep writing because words are seeds. Some die in the dust, but some take root. And when they grow, they split the ground. This is not the end. This is the waiting ground. The desert does not give rain often. When it comes, it doesn't ask permission, it attacks. One moment the sky is flat white. The next it splits open and dumps water like judgment. I had lived in that trailer long enough to memorize its weaknesses. Every seam dripped. Every window leaked. The mattress sucked up water like a sponge. I wrapped myself in a blanket and waited it out, counting the seconds between thunder and flash. But the desert had other plans. By morning, the storm had carved trenches through the dirt lot behind the trailer. The ground that once looked like solid clay now ran with gullies, streaks of mud dragging rocks and roots into daylight. And there, in the raw earth, I saw it, a flash of metal where no metal should be. At first I thought it was trash, some rust it can toss decades ago. But when I dug with my hands, the shape was square. Heavy. A box. It took me 20 minutes to drag it free, my palms cut and muddy, my heart thudding like I just discovered buried treasure. The lid was corroded shut, but I pried it open with a bent spoon from the trailer. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth dark with age, lay papers and a folded map. The smell hit first, old iron and tobacco. The kind of smell you only find in trunks left in barns. My great-grandfather's handwriting covered the first page. His name, Elias Carter, still bold after a century. I spread the documents on the rickety table. My hands shook as I read. Land deeds. Original claims. A parcel number that matched the county maps I'd been studying at the library. The lot beneath my feet wasn't just an abandoned trailer park. It was registered, titled, and still in Carter hands. And then the map, drawn in ink creased at the folds, marked with tiny X's that snaked across the southern boundary. Beside the line, one word, written in Elias's careful script. Vein. A gold vein. For a long time I just stared. My trailer, my exile, was planted on top of a fortune hidden under desert stone. Todd thought he had dumped me in the middle of nowhere. He had unknowingly delivered me to the very place our bloodline had once marked as treasure. I laughed then. Out loud. Harder than I had in years. The sound startled the lizard under the steps and sent him skittering. Because it was too perfect. The son who stole my pension had parked me on top of something he couldn't steal, something too deep for greedy hands. I touched the ink on the map like it was a pulse. Elias had left this behind, not for Todd, not for lawyers, not for strangers, but for blood. For whoever among us was stubborn enough to endure the desert until the earth itself gave up its secret. That night, I sat at my notebook and wrote a new line. Every day is a gift. Some days deliver miracles in mud. The storm had ruined the mattress, soaked my blankets, and left the trailer reeking of mildew. But I didn't care. Because I now knew what the desert had been hiding. I pressed the map flat, tucked it into a plastic sleeve, and slid it under my pillow like a charm. My great-grandfather's secret was now mine. Todd thought he'd left me to wither. But the desert, fierce and cruel as it is, had chosen me instead. And I would make sure the world knew it. Paper doesn't sweat. It doesn't stutter. If the ink is honest, it outlives men and their excuses. That's what I told myself as I slid my great-grandfather's map and deeds into a plastic sleeve, tucked them in a canvas tote, and caught the first bus into town. The county complex was a box of cold air and fluorescent lights, records, assessor, archives, each door labeled like a promise. I headed for archives. A brass plaque read, Rosa Delgado, Senior Archivist. The woman behind the counter wore silver hair in a tight bun, and the expression of someone who had seen every kind of story walk in on 2 feet. Help you? She asked, already reaching for a logbook. I need to know if these are real, I said, laying out the oilcloth bundle like a surgeon unveiling instruments. Elias Carter. Early 1900s. Parcel out by State Route 19. Her eyebrows lifted a fraction. Carter. Haven't heard that in a while. She pulled on cotton gloves. Let's see. We worked in a quiet rhythm. She read, I breathed. She opened a bound index thicker than a Bible, flipped to see, and traced lines with a ruler. Book and page, she murmured, scribbling numbers, then rolled a microfilm drawer open. The machine hummed to life. Here we are. She pointed. On the gray screen, black letters bloomed. Certificate of Patent, United States to Elias J. Carter, 1913. My heart thudded once hard. Rosa adjusted the focus until the seal sharpened, eagle, scroll, signatures. This is a patented claim, she said, more to the record than to me. Not just a location notice. Fee simple to surface and minerals. Rare nowadays. She cross-checked the parcel map I printed from the library. Saguaro County, Township 14 South, Range 13 East. Matches your deed description. Flip were. Subsequent transfers. Interesting. I waited. Looks like the Carter estate filed a quiet title in 1958 to clean the chain. No separations of mineral rights recorded since. Taxes were bundled into a bulk payment for the old ranch estate subdivision. But your parcel shows no severance. She looked over her glasses. If this is your line, and these papers are yours by descent, you didn't just find a box. I swallowed. Say it plain. You might be sitting on everything under that box, she said. She printed certified copies, raised seal, blue stamp. $6 a page. I counted out bills and coins from a folded envelope, fingers steady because hers were. Do you see a lien? A challenge? Anything that says this belongs to someone else? Rosa scanned another roll. There's an easement for a utility line recorded in 1979 that cuts across the northeast corner. Nothing that touches minerals. Nothing that voids the patent. She slid my map closer, smoothing it with a gloved palm. Her eyes softened. Your Elias knew what he was looking at. I told her about the rain, the trench, the metal box in the mud. About the inked word vein marching along the southern boundary. Rosa didn't blink. A map and a patent prove ownership, not value. For value you'll need essays, a geologist, probably a mining engineer. But if the geology matches what your great-grandfather marked. She let the sentence hang. How much are we talking? The question felt dangerous in my mouth. I don't quote numbers, she said, smiling with half her face. But I've seen royalty deals on patented ground in this region that start with 7 figures and learn new numbers fast. Depends on grade, continuity, access, a dozen other things. What you have that most folks don't is clean title. That alone is gold. I stared at the stamped copies in my hands, the county seal cold through the paper. For months I had measured my life in beans and bread, in minutes of shade and inches of water. Now I was weighing it in signatures and embossed circles. Rosa handed me a yellow sticky with 3 names and phone numbers. Independent geologist. Reputable mineral rights attorney. A landman who won't sell you your own breath. Call in that order. And Miss Carter, I said. Evelyn Carter. Miss Carter, she said. Keep your voice low and your records high. People get loud when numbers grow. She tapped the patent on the screen. This is the loudest thing in the room. Protect it. On my way out, I stopped at the assessor's counter. A clerk printed the current parcel card. Owner of record. Carter heirs, et al. Assessed at pennies because no one had updated it since the Eisenhower administration. I signed a change of address form with an address that wasn't mine exactly. Box I opened that afternoon so no one would be waiting by my trailer door with questions I wasn't ready to answer. At the bus stop, I sat with the tote in my lap like it held a heartbeat. Across the street, a pawn shop blinked its neon promises. Down the block, a payday lender did the same. The world had always been ready to buy desperation at a discount. Today I wasn't selling. Back in the trailer, I laid everything out on the table. The certified copies, the parcel card, the sticky note with names, my great-grandfather's map. I took photos of each page and saved them to a new email account with a password no one would guess. Then I slid the originals into a zip bag and tucked them beneath the loose board under the sink. The sound of the wood settling felt like a door closing on the old helplessness. In my notebook I wrote, verification not hope. Patent located. Chain clean. Minerals unsevered. Next, geologist attorney options. Stay quiet. Move smart. I poured the last of my water into a glass and held it up like a toast. To Elias, who had written vain with a hand steadier than mine. To Rosa, who spoke truth without perfume. To a desert that hid a fortune until I had the nerve to ask for proof. Todd had thought the trailer was a finish line. The county seal told me it was mile 1. Tomorrow I would make the first call on Rosa's list. And the day after that, the second. I didn't need a miracle anymore. I had a map. I had a patent. I had my name where it mattered. The first time I dialed the number, my hand shook. Mining companies weren't for people like me. Old women in dusty trailers with a fan that coughed more than it cooled. But the map burned a hole in my mind. I couldn't sit still. Hello. Saguaro Mineral Services. How may I direct your call? I cleared my throat. My name is Evelyn Carter. I own a parcel outside Highway 19. I think it may sit on mineral ground. Could someone take a look? The woman on the line didn't laugh. She took down the coordinates, the deed number, and said, "We'll send an engineer by the end of the week." When I hung up, the silence in the trailer was deafening. I'd done it. A step so small it fit on a phone keypad but big enough to tilt my world. He arrived 3 days later. Khaki pants, steel-toed boots, a hard hat tucked under his arm. His truck rattled with tools and dust. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes. I'm Mike. Got your call. Mind if I take a look?" He sat up quietly, like a man who'd done this 100 times. An auger drill, sample bags, a handheld spectrometer. I watched from the shade of the trailer, notebook in my lap, heart thudding every time he scooped another core of earth. The desert gave itself up slowly. Red dirt, then clay, then something darker. Mike bent over the auger, lifted a fragment to the light, and whistled low. "Seen this before," he muttered. He dropped it into a bag and kept going. By sunset he had a dozen labeled samples. "I'll take these to the lab," he said, wiping his forehead with a rag. "Give us about a week." A week. I'd lived entire lives in shorter spans, waiting for paychecks, waiting for apologies that never came. This week would be different. 7 days later, my prepaid phone buzzed. Mrs. Carter? This is Mike. Do you have a minute? I gripped the receiver so hard my knuckles whitened. Go ahead. We ran the assays. You've got mineralization all right. High grade. Consistent across the samples. To be blunt, there's gold under that trailer. Not dust, not a few flecks. A vein. Substantial. The words sank slow like pebbles dropping into a well. And you're sure? As sure as science allows. I've sent over the full report. If you want, we can connect you with a leasing agent. Companies pay good money for rights like this. I'm talking 7 figures, maybe more, depending on market price. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. The fan squeaked overhead. My notebook lay open where I'd scrawled each day as a gift, even dust and dry bread. Suddenly the gift looked heavier, brighter. Thank you, I managed. My voice cracked. That night, I laid the report across the kitchen table. Rows of numbers, percentages, geological jargon I barely understood. But one phrase repeated. Economically viable deposit. I traced the words with my finger until the ink smudged. For months I had been reduced to crumbs, both literal and figurative. Cast off, written off, left with the trailer and silence. Now the earth itself whispered that I was sitting on a fortune. I thought of Todd, my son, my betrayer. He believed he'd buried me alive in heat and dust. He never imagined the ground he abandoned me on was worth more than every account he'd stolen. I closed the report and slid it beneath the loose board under the sink, next to my great-grandfather's map. My hand lingered on the wood. The desert had been my cage. Now it was my weapon. And for the first time in years I allowed myself a smile. The first check didn't arrive in a mailbox. It arrived in a leather folder, laid gently across a polished oak table in a conference room high above downtown Tucson. The lawyer's watch gleamed as he slid it toward me. Mrs. Carter, he said smoothly, this is a standard mineral rights lease. 20-year term, renewable. You retain ownership of the land, we gain extraction rights. The advance is substantial. Royalties will follow quarterly, based on production levels. I stared at the folder as if it might vanish if I blinked too quickly. Just paper. Just ink. And yet, it carried more weight than every disappointment I'd hauled through life. Advance. I asked, my voice catching on the word. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. 7 figures. Cashier's check. Paid within 10 business days. I should have pinched myself. 2 weeks earlier I had been soaking stale bread in water to make it stretch. I'd lived with roaches, with the hum of a broken fan, with silence so heavy it pressed into my bones. Now men in tailored suits with voices like velvet were treating me as though I were one of them. I signed where they pointed. My hand trembled, but not from fear. This wasn't weakness. This was the tremor of history shifting beneath my fingertips, the line between the before and the after. The lawyer closed the folder and smiled. Congratulations, Mrs. Carter. You are about to become a very wealthy woman. The first check cleared on a Tuesday afternoon. I walked into the bank clutching my canvas purse like it still held all my worth. The teller typed my account number, then blinked, checked again, and finally looked up at me with a new kind of respect. Ma'am, she said carefully, would you like assistance setting up a private client account? I didn't faint. I didn't scream. I simply stepped outside into the Arizona sun and let the heat cover me. For the first time, the desert didn't feel like punishment. Felt like a crown. The trailer, that tin oven where I'd been discarded, was no longer my prison. The very next morning, I locked its flimsy door and walked away. No ceremony, no farewell. Just silence. In Tucson, I signed a lease on a brick house with blue shutters and a wide porch swing. The kind of house that made strangers slow their cars to look twice. I filled it with furniture that didn't wobble. Sheets that smelled of lavender instead of mildew. A refrigerator that hummed steady instead of rattling like an old engine. I bought a lamp with a stained glass shade, simply because I liked how it scattered light across the walls. For the first time in years, I slept without fear of the roof leaking or the floor collapsing. The next step was myself. At the mall, a clerk slid a dress bag across the counter. Inside, silk that whispered against my skin when I tried it on. Deep emerald green, a color I'd never dared wear when my life was small and gray. In the optician's office, I said firmly, the best frames you have, please. The woman handed me tortoiseshell glasses with gold arms. When I put them on, the world sharpened. Edges crisp, colors alive. For years I had stared at life through scratched plastic, both literal and metaphorical. That day I saw clearly. I left the store walking taller, the desert sun glinting off my new lenses. That night, in my new kitchen, I cooked dinner fit for someone who mattered. Steak seared in butter, potatoes roasted with rosemary, a glass of red wine poured from a bottle that didn't come with a screw cap. I ate at a solid oak table wearing silk, glasses glinting in the soft light. The taste of the meal was rich, yes, but the flavor that lingered longest was dignity. Afterward, I pulled out the old notebook I had kept in the trailer. The one where I had once scrawled lines like, "Each day is a gift, even if it is only dust and dry bread." I turned to a fresh page and wrote instead, "Each day is a gift. Some gifts weigh heavy enough to break chains." I closed the notebook, pushed it aside and lifted my wine glass. Todd had left me to rot. Now I was living in a house he would never step inside, wearing clothes his wife would never afford, holding wealth he would never touch. The desert had been his sentence for me. But in the end, it had become my deliverance. The first time I said no, it felt strange in my mouth, like trying on a new pair of shoes, stiff but promising. For most of my life, I'd been the woman who bent, who stretched herself thin so others could be comfortable. I said yes to overtime, yes to bills that weren't mine, yes to a son who thought of me as ballast. But now, with a bank balance that made managers sit up straighter, I had discovered a new language. And the first word I mastered was no. I opened a brokerage account downtown. The kind with a marble lobby and fresh coffee always brewing. The advisor, barely 30, hair slicked, voice smooth, flashed me a rehearsed smile. "Mrs. Carter, may I recommend a high-risk growth portfolio? Exciting opportunities abroad." "No," I said simply. His pen froze above the paper. "No. I want steady dividends, not fireworks. I've had enough explosions in my life." He blinked, then nodded. From that moment the tone shifted. He wasn't humoring me. He was listening. My money, my rules. Next came the lawyer. I'd asked around and found a woman named Patricia, known in Tucson for being sharp enough to cut stone. She spread my new documents across her mahogany desk. "We'll set up a trust," she explained, tapping her pen. "That way your assets are shielded. If certain family members come sniffing, they'll find nothing but a locked gate." The words family members hung heavy in the air. She didn't know my story, not yet, but I saw in her eyes she had guessed enough. "Do it," I said. My voice didn't shake. For years I'd been the woman without choices. Now I was the one building walls and deciding who, if anyone, could climb over. The house itself became my canvas. Out back, I tore up the patchy grass and hired landscapers to design a garden. Rows of roses, desert sage, and lemon trees took root. When the first blossoms opened, their scent drifted through my kitchen window, reminding me of the orchard my grandfather once tended before the land dried out. This garden was mine. Not inherited, not borrowed, not temporary. Mine. I spent mornings walking barefoot on the cool stone paths, coffee in hand, watching green life push through the desert soil. Proof that even harsh ground can bloom again if you give it enough water, enough care. At the grocery store, when a clerk asked if I wanted to sign up for a rewards card, I smiled and said, "No, thank you." Simple. Direct. And the power in that word was startling. At the dentist, when they suggested an expensive cosmetic treatment, I shook my head. No. Just keep my teeth healthy. And most importantly, when my phone buzzed one evening with Todd's name on the screen, the first time he dared call since abandoning me in that trailer, I let it ring. Then I pressed decline. No explanation. No apology. Just no. The woman in the mirror was no longer the discarded mother who scribbled survival notes in a trailer notebook. She wore new glasses that caught the light, silk dresses that skimmed her frame, and a smile that came not from wealth alone, but from ownership of her own choices. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone to give me permission. I wasn't begging for space at anyone's table. I was at the head of my own. I closed the day as I often did now, sitting on the porch swing, garden blooming around me, the desert sky streaked pink and gold. I lifted a glass of iced tea and whispered the words I'd once written when life was nothing but dust and stale bread. Each day is a gift. But now I added something new. And I finally choose how to open it. The knock didn't come on my door. It came on the iron gate at the end of the long drive. A metallic clang that echoed across my garden like an unwelcome memory. Through the kitchen window I saw the black SUV idling on the road, dust settling on its glossy hood. Two figures stepped out, Todd and his wife Melissa. My son and the woman who once told me I was too set in my ways to be useful. Now they were here, faces painted with something they thought looked like humility. The intercom buzzed. My security guard, a tall ex-Marine named Alvarez, spoke first. "Mrs. Carter, they say they're family. Want me to let them in?" I glanced down at my robe, silk the color of cream, and the sweating glass of lemonade in my hand. I had been enjoying a quiet afternoon on the porch, reading the business section. A far cry from the days when my view was peeling trailer walls and a broken fan. "Keep the gate closed," I said. "I'll come down." When I appeared, walking slowly along the stone path, Melissa's eyes widened as though she'd seen a ghost. Todd tried a smile, but it wavered when he noticed the guard at my side. "Mom," he called out through the bars, voice syrupy sweet. "We've missed you. We want to reconnect." I sipped my lemonade, the ice clinking. "Reconnect?" I echoed. "Is that what we're calling it?" Melissa jumped in quickly. "Maggie, we were wrong. We realize that now. Family is too important to throw away." I let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable. For years I had filled silences with apologies, excuses, promises to do better. Not anymore. Alvarez shifted beside me, solid as the desert mountains. Todd cleared his throat. "Mom, maybe we could come in, talk properly? We'd love to see the house." "The house," I repeated softly, eyes sweeping over the blue shutters, the roses blooming behind me, the fountain gurgling in the courtyard. "Funny. You weren't interested in my living conditions before." Todd winced but pressed on. "Things were complicated. We made mistakes. But you look amazing. Really. And we want to make things right." I tilted my head. Make things right? Or make things profitable? Melissa's smile faltered. And in that crack I saw the truth. I raised my glass, condensation dripping down my fingers. "You left me in a trailer with roaches and stale bread. Do you remember that, Todd? Do you remember telling me it was for the best? Now you come here to this." I gestured behind me, the garden, the house, the life I had built. "And expect lemonade and forgiveness." "Mom, please," Todd said quietly. We didn't know. We didn't know the land was worth anything." I laughed, the sound sharp. "Exactly. You thought I was worth nothing. That's the difference." Melissa tried again, her voice trembling now. "We've been struggling, Maggie. Bills, the kids, everything's piling up. We need help. Just a little. You have so much." Her eyes darted to the house behind me like a predator sniffing prey. I handed my half-empty glass to Alvarez, then placed both hands on the gate. The metal was cool under my palms. "You're right," I said softly. "I do have so much now. But what I don't have, what I'll never have again, is the habit of saying yes to people who throw me away." Todd's face fell. Melissa's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. The dust from their SUV swirled in the hot air, clinging to their clothes. Finally, Todd whispered, "So that's it? You're shutting us out?" I smiled. Not cruelly. Not with anger. But with the peace of someone who had finally claimed her place. "I'm not shutting you out," I said. "You shut me out years ago. I just learned to enjoy the quiet." With that, I turned back toward my house. My robe brushed against the stone path, the scent of roses wrapping around me. Behind me, the guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, send them away," I said without looking back. "And next time, don't bother calling." I returned to the porch, poured myself another lemonade, and sat beneath the shade. From a distance, I heard the engine start, the SUV pulling away in defeat. The sound faded, replaced by birdsong and the gentle hum of my new life. For the first time in decades, the only voice in my home was mine. And that was more than enough. The desert light was ablaze when they came back, all glare and heat and the faint rattle of mesquite pods in the wind. Alvarez walked with me to the gate and then stopped, a silent parenthesis in a black polo, hands folded, eyes everywhere but on my face. Todd gripped the bars like a penitent. Melissa stood half a step behind, sunglasses pushed into her hair, smile trembling at the edges like a sticker that wouldn't quite stick. "Mom," he started, voice breaking on the single syllable. "You're my mother." I let the words hang between us. I had filled too many silences in my life. Explaining, excusing, shrinking. "Not today. Family doesn't leave you to rot in the desert," I said, and the metal under my palm felt cool, honest. He flinched. Melissa jumped in because manipulators hate quiet. "Mrs. Carter, Evie, things were complicated. We made mistakes. We want to make this right. Can we come in and talk?" I took a sip of lemonade. Ice-tapped glass. Somewhere a cactus wren scolded something that wouldn't move. "Make it right?" I said softly. "Tell me how you make right a locked trailer and a canceled pension. How you handle a mother's money. How you drive away repeating, 'Relax here,' as if exile were a spa day." "Mom." "No," I said. "You got the first word for years. Today I keep the floor." I lifted a hand and counted one by one. 1. You took my phone to simplify things and cut me off from the world. 2. You cleared my account without asking, then lectured me about responsibility. 3. You called a rusted box temporary housing, and left me with stale bread and a fan that coughed dust. 4. When I asked for a ride back, you said I was too emotional to think clearly. 5. You did not call. Not once. The desert knew I was alive more than you did. A muscle ticked in his jaw. He stared at the road where heat made the air look like water. "I thought," he began. "You thought I was a burden," I finished. "You thought I would fade." Melissa's voice thinned. "We were under pressure. The kids, the mortgage. Pressure reveals character," I said. "It revealed mine. It revealed yours." For a moment we just breathed together, strangers with matching cheekbones. He tried for the soft place. "I messed up. I did. But you're here and you're fine." His eyes flicked past me. Roses climbing a trellis, the blue shutters, the fountain the color of coins. "Couldn't we start again?" "We don't start again," I said. "We start where we left off, at the gate." Melissa pushed her smile forward another inch. "Evie, you have enough to help. Just a bridge. We'll pay you back. We're family." "You like that word when it opens doors," I said. "You didn't like it when it meant keeping one unlocked." Alvarez shifted his weight. Todd noticed him for the first time and straightened, hands falling from the bars. "So this is really it? You'll shut us out because we did what we had to do for a while?" I studied his face. The man's face on the boy I taught to tie his shoes with a rhyme we made up on the kitchen floor. I remembered the burn of the trailer's metal doorknob at noon, the scream of coyotes at 2 a.m., the sound of my own breath counting nights. Then the rain, and the earth giving up its secret the way a wounded thing sometimes rolls to show you the thorn. "You left me with nothing but wind and heat and a notebook," I said. "I wrote my way out." The storm tore the dirt open, and there was a map with my name on it. I took it to someone who could read more than pity. I signed papers that didn't shake. I learned interest and boundaries and how to say no without explaining. Melissa's mouth tightened. "So you do want revenge?" "I wanted oxygen," I said. "I wanted a lock that answered to me." Todd swallowed. "What do you want now?" "Truth," I said. "In writing. An apology with verbs, not excuses. Repayment of what you took, even if it's $10 a week. Therapy so you stop confusing control with care. And space." I glanced at Alvarez, then back at the iron. "This gate stays shut until the work begins. Visits happen by invitation. There will be rules and they will be mine." He looked wrecked. "You really won't let us in? You really left me out," I said. "We're even on logistics. Not on life." He tried one last key. "I'm still your son. And I am still myself," I said. "I had to become her without you." Wind ran a hand over the bougainvillea. The SUV ticked as it cooled. I breathed in roses and stone and the clean, quiet pride of a boundary drawn straight. "I don't hate you, Todd," I said. "But love without safety is just weather. Changes and leaves you raw." He nodded, something in his posture giving way. Melissa reached for his arm and missed. I stepped back from the gate. "Alvarez," I said. "Ma'am. If they need water for the road, give them bottles. If they need directions, give them a map. If they need entry, they'll need more than need." "Yes, ma'am." Todd lifted his eyes. For a heartbeat I saw the boy who used to hand me dandelions as if they were orchids. I let the kindness rise and set. Mercy did not mean forgetting the desert. You buried me in dust, I said, the words steady as the mountains behind me. But I grew roots in gold. We filed the papers on a Tuesday, the kind of blue sky morning Arizona does better than anyone. The clerk at the county building typed Golden Roots Foundation into a form, stamped it twice, and slid the folder back to me. Mission: emergency support for seniors abandoned by family, housing, legal help, practical money skills. Not charity. A landing strip. Our first call came 2 days later. Mrs. Alvarez from Yuma, no relation to my guard, left a message in a voice like dry leaves. They told me I was in the way during renovations and never gave back my key. We put her in a motel that afternoon, paid for by a check I wrote with a new steadiness in my hand. By Friday she had a pro bono lawyer and a doctor's appointment to restart her medication. On Sunday she sent a photo of a plastic chair outside a studio apartment and a potted aloe with 2 stubborn shoots. Feels like oxygen, she wrote. That became our measure for success. Oxygen. We didn't save people. We restored air. I hired 2 case managers who know how to listen without rearranging someone's life. We built a tiny office in a strip mall between a taqueria and a shoe repair. The sign is nothing fancy, cream letters on a clean window, but people find us. Word travels through church bulletins, the senior center, the back pew after service where truth takes its shoes off. We keep a closet of essentials: prepaid phones, portable safes, a stack of bus passes bound with a rubber band. We teach a Wednesday workshop called Say No Out Loud: how to tell a banker, a landlord, a son that the answer is no and still breathe afterward. I put the trailer notebook in a frame over my desk, the page where I wrote day 1 facing out. The candle wax smudge is still visible in the corner. When I start to drift into speeches, I look at the ink and remember the heat, the cough of the fan, the mile of silence between a mother and her child. Some days donors come in with checks. Some days they come in with stories and nothing else. We take both. A retired librarian brings us a rolling cart of binders and shows our clients how to keep their papers in order. Deeds, benefits letters, ID copies, everything labeled in block caps. A woman from the archive, the same one who confirmed my claim, now runs a monthly clinic on reclaiming documents lost in someone else's file cabinet. A phrase that earns a dozen rueful laughs every time. I learned to draw lines with a pen. Now I'm learning to draw them with a budget. We keep overhead lean, the work solid. We pay the lawyers on time, the motel in advance, the dignity forward. I don't take a salary, the gold pays my bills. But the checks I sign for other people, 3 nights safe, a locksmith at noon, a hot plate and 2 mugs, feel richer than any deposit I've made. People ask me whether starting a foundation is my revenge. I tell them the truth. Revenge is noisy. This is quiet. Revenge looks backward. This looks forward. I started writing at night again, not by candle but by the pool light, the water throwing shy blue onto the page. The book is not a howl. It's a map. Chapter titles are plain and stubborn. How to keep copies the day the storm came. Interest isn't a monster, boundaries aren't rude when family isn't safe. I kept my voice the way I keep my garden. Clipped, clean, alive. The publisher wanted a tragic photo for the jacket, something with peeling paint. I sent them a picture of my hands instead. The lines clear, the gold band glinting not as prize but as tool. When the advance arrived, I didn't frame the check. I bought a van with a ramp and shelves and labeled bins. We call it the root kit. We take it to parks and church lots and knock on trailer doors that look like mine used to. We hand out folders and flash drives, water and granola bars, a list of numbers that answer at 2 a.m. If a door splinters, people say bless you a lot. We say we'll see you Tuesday at 10. Alvarez walks the perimeter of the house at dusk, the way he always does, and sometimes he stops at the bougainvillea to trade complaints with a hummingbird. He's learned to knock on my office door once before stepping in. I'm learning to let him because protection is a practice. Todd sent a letter in a plain envelope. No return address, just his left-leaning script that used to fill permission slips and once a Mother's Day card drawn in green crayon. He didn't ask for money. He wrote the words I was wrong without decorations and included a receipt for his first therapy appointment. I put the letter under the aloe on my desk, Next to a list of names for the week. Love and work can sit side by side without bleeding into each other. They should. Melissa hasn't written. That is between her and the quiet. On Sundays, I bring a pitcher of lemonade to the office and prop the door open. People come by with updates and small triumphs. A restraining order served, a new mailbox key, a grandchild's school picture slid proudly across the desk. We take photos in front of the window, no forced smiles, just the kind of faces you wear when you can stand without holding on. I walk the garden every evening. The agave holds the ground like an oath. The roses are bolder than they have any right to be in this climate. The conservatory smells like mint and damp earth, its own weather system. When it rains, I still stand at the threshold and listen as if the sky is telling me something I don't want to miss. The storm that cracked my ground open gave me more than ore. It gave me an angle to see myself by. People like to end stories with forgiveness because it ties up neatly. I end mine with capacity. My life is bigger than the harm that started this chapter. So is my table. So is my gate. If you're watching this and the person who should have loved you turned their face away, hear me. Your worth is not a group project. Get a folder. Make copies. Say no out loud. Ask for help from someone who doesn't benefit from your confusion. When the storm comes, and it will, watch the ground. Some secrets take rain to speak. The foundation's motto is taped above the copier in crooked letters we refuse to straighten. We don't rescue. We root. The book's last line is already written. Even if a copy editor will try to soften it, it won't be softened. It belongs to the woman who wrote day one with a shaking hand and to every grandmother after me who needs a sentence like a door. He wanted me gone in the desert. Instead, I was reborn in a new family. Moms don't quit. We just change addresses.